What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another preview and prediction video for action in Week 13. The only other matchup that'll have its own individual video. We'll talk about a couple matchups in the Big 12 later on in a Big 12 video that I'm releasing later today, but this one needs its own individual video. I want to talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Army Black Knights. Last time you saw Notre Dame face off against an armed forces team, it was earlier this season against the Navy midshipmen, and they absolutely blew the brakes off of the midshipmen. Will they do the same thing against Army, or are the Black Knights going to be able to stay undefeated in Yankee Stadium? We'll tell you everything you need to know about the Black Knights and Irish here in just a little bit, but before we do that, you guys know I got to say thank you for all the love and support this channel has seen and continues to receive. It really does mean a lot to me. If you want to continue to support what I do here on YouTube, do anything you can to interact with the channel, especially if you just want to kick back, relax, and watch this video. That would mean a lot to me. Or if you haven't done so already and you feel like doing so, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. You especially should if you're as big of a college football nerd as I am. And support the channel any way you can by interacting with it any way you can. That's liking, that's commenting, that's sharing, and anything else you do helps support what I do here on YouTube. And if you want to support me elsewise, well, go give me a follow on Twitter or X, whatever you prefer to call it, at TailgateNate29 to show your support for everything else I do in the sports media world. I would greatly appreciate all of that. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Notre Dame, I give you Army, I give you a sort of pseudo rivalry. I think a lot of people would call it a rivalry as well, renewed back in Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. How do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, we're going to go through some keys to the game when each team possesses the football. So we will first look at the Army offense against this Notre Dame defense, and then we will look at the Notre Dame defense against the Army Black Knight offense. We'll sort of go through my keys to the game, give you some final thoughts, how I think this game is going to play out, and then at the end of the video, I'll give you a final score prediction for who comes away a winner from the Bronx in New York in Yankee Stadium. So again, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Black Knights and I give you the Irish. Let's start by talking about the undefeated Black Knights and what they do offensively, because you can't talk about this Black Knight team without talking about what Bryson Daly has done from the quarterback position. Army is throwing the football a little bit more this year. Now, are they throwing the football a lot? No. Daly's only got 51 passing attempts for 644 yards, 7 touchdowns, and just the 1 interception. And Navy's a team that doesn't turn the football over anyway. We'll talk more about that later. But Army overall as a whole, guys, they take really good care of the football. They are excellent on third down. And because they don't really pass the football that much, they don't allow a whole ton of sacks. But if you want to extrapolate that stat forward, something you won't see on screen, but something I feel like should be mentioned, this is a team that in general just does not allow a lot of tackles for loss, meaning their offensive line is superb. It's absolutely phenomenal. But I want to get back to talking about Bryson Daly, because that was his stats through the air. On the ground, though, is where his value is really felt. 1,062 yards and 21 rushing touchdowns for Bryson Daly this year. Kanye Udo, and hopefully I'm saying that last name right, is their primary running back. 856 yards, 9 touchdowns, and both Daly and Udo are averaging over 6 yards per carry. But there is a guy averaging over 10 yards per carry here. He's got 41 carries for 439 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's Noah Short, and you'll see a lot of other guys come in and run the football for Army as well. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys on the stat sheet that have at least 19 carries for the Black Knights this season. Daly, Udo, and Short will be the primary ones, mainly Daly, my apologies, and Udo, but there is a lot of other talent on this Army team that can run the football, and they average 335 yards per game, or just barely under that, and that is a superb number. That is leading the country, and obviously when you run a triple option offense, and when you run the style of football that Navy, Army, and Air Force all run, well, you're going to be some of the leaders in the country at being able to rush the football, and Army is one of those. They do an exceptional job. They have an exceptional signal caller standing under center or in shotgun, in the wishbone, whatever formation they happen to run. But again, you just heard me say it earlier, and I'll say it one more time. This Army team has great at taking care of the football. Only 3 turnovers all year. They just don't they simply just do not lose a lot of fumbles. They've only lost 2 fumbles all year and only the 1 interception because, well, again, they don't throw the football that much to really have that number climb any higher. And you extrapolate further beyond the only 3 sacks allowed when Bryson Daly does drop back to pass. And in fact, Daly's only been sacked once. It's been the backup in Dwayne Coleman that has been sacked twice. This team just doesn't allow many tackles for loss. Now, that is something that Notre Dame absolutely lives with because they can live in opponents' backfield. They have 28 sacks on the year and 25 turnovers forced. Now, let's dive on into some of our keys here. I've talked about Bryson Daly already a little bit. I think he's going to have to be dynamic in this game. This is a Notre Dame defense that does not really hardly allows anything to get through them. They allow only 277 yards per game. They're only allowing teams to score 11.5 points per game, 4.3 yards per play. And ever since that Northern Illinois loss, this team has been absolutely superb. They're playing like a top 10 team in the country. They're playing like a top 6 team in the country, which they're at 6 right now. And some may argue they're playing like a top 5 team in the country right now. I definitely would be one of the people that would arguing for them to be in the top 5, but obviously Indiana's taken that spot, and I think that's going to end up sorting itself out this week. But obviously, as Ohio State and Indiana do have to play each other, but this Notre Dame defense doesn't allow anything. They don't allow big plays, especially through their secondary, but it's that run defense that's going to have to hold up in this game against Army. Bryson Daly is going to have to be dynamic. I think him and a lot of these other Army backs are going to have to be able to rip off some big runs, which is a hell of a lot easier said than done against this Notre Dame defensive front, but also through the air. If you want to try to get Notre Dame on their heels, the secondary is not the most vulnerable. In fact, it's one of the most lockdown secondaries that we have across college football this season, but making plays through the air, and even if it's just short gains through the air, being able to connect on some passes is going to get this Notre Dame defense confused because I think they're going to throw a lot of resources at the run. Now, obviously, the secondary is good enough, and if Army starts to pass the football, Notre Dame is going to lock down on it really quickly, but the Notre Dame pass rush is going to be an absolute problem, and it is a problem for opposing offenses. It's not a problem for Notre Dame, so if you're just kind of skimming over here, not listening to the video, no, that Notre Dame pass rush is not a problem for Notre Dame. It's a problem for other teams. Again, though, can that rush a defense hold up? It's been really good so far this season. You got a lot of guys up front that are very good at being able to slow down that run. But this is a different beast when you're talking about Army. They throw a ton of different looks at you. Well, you go back and you take a look at what Notre Dame did against Navy. Again, Navy running a similar style of offense. Well, Notre Dame, they only allowed Navy, or I should say not only, but they allowed Navy 222 yards and 5.2 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns on the ground. If that's going to be a similar story here when you play the Army Black Knights, Army's defense is a hell of a lot tougher than what you saw out of the Navy midshipmen. So that rush defense going to have to hold up in this one, but third downs and turnovers are the big keys because something has got to give. Army is a really good third down offense. Notre Dame is a really good third down defense. Army doesn't turn the football over. Notre Dame has forced one of the highest turnover totals across the entire country. Something has got to give here on that front. Either Army's got to stay doing what they're doing or Notre Dame's got to stay doing what they're doing. I think the turnover battle, how both teams play on the money downs, not only on this side of the ball specifically, but on the other side of the ball as well, will be crucial in who comes away a winner. But I just talked about it, right? Notre Dame's run defense is going to have to hold up. When it played Navy, again, Navy only threw the ball 14 times, and I say only, that is a lot for Navy. I don't think Army is going to throw the ball that much. They're going to look to try to ground and pound against this Notre Dame defensive front. And again, Notre Dame allowed 5.2 yards per carry. If they allow that to Army, then that's going to be a problem. And the reason I say that is because, well, Navy just didn't really have the defense to be able to hold its own against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, because Notre Dame went for 51 points, and overall, I think, over 450 yards of total offense there in that game. They did it on the ground. They did it through the air. Navy couldn't stop anything. Army can. Army can stop things up front. The pass rush is pretty darn good. They got 20 sacks on the year. They have forced 14 turnovers. And a fun fact for all of you fine people out there, all of the 14 turnovers that Army has forced this season, they have all been by way of the interception, which means Riley Leonard, if he puts the football in harm's way, that is going to be absolutely crucial to Army's success. Now, Army has only forced one forced fumble so far this season. Again, that just speaks volumes to sort of what the game plan is against this Army defense, but also the fact Army's defensive front, they're really good at stopping the run, not great at forcing the turnover, but they're really good in pretty much every other facet of the game. The secondary is where the Army defense makes their money, the quote unquote. This is an Army secondary that is going to be really, really tough for Notre Dame to try to solve here. And you've heard me say it pretty much all video long. My first point, this is a tougher defense than what Navy has. Again, similar offensive style. Army probably won't throw the football as much as what Navy did, but Army's defense is a hell of a lot tougher. They're allowing under 300 yards per game. In fact, under 275 by just a little bit, right around 4.7 yards per play. But again, if you do want to attack Army, you're going to want to try to attack the secondary, but you have to be careful, right? Those 14 interceptions are all 14 turnovers that Army has forced this year. But let's take a look at what Riley Leonard has done for Notre Dame as of late. Again, Riley Leonard, you can look back earlier this season, and while his overall stat line is absolutely not going to jump out at you by any means. He's only got 1,789 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 4 picks. That just not is going to explode out at you on the stat sheet. His rushing stats might, though. 641 yards and 13 touchdowns and 104 carries. He's averaging over 6 yards per carry. And you just take a look at, quite simply, what Riley Leonard has done ever since that loss to Northern Illinois, and especially within the past couple of weeks. No, he's not flashing out for 200 yards. No, he's not gunslinging it everywhere, but he's being efficient with the football. He's throwing a hell of a lot more touchdowns than picks, and he's being able to affect the game on the ground. In his last 4 games played, he has at least 8 rushing carries, and he has 6 touchdowns in his last 5 games played on the ground. Notre Dame and Riley Leonard specifically, Riley Leonard's really just been able to find that rhythm in both being able to make plays with his arms and being able to make plays with his legs. He is making plays in every single facet of the game, and he's going to have to here. Being able to game plan for a quarterback that not only can throw the ball really well, which Riley Leonard can, we've seen it this season, we even saw it last year or over the past couple of seasons at Duke, but he can run the football, and we've especially seen that this season. If he can continue to run the football and just break down defenses the way he has been in the past couple of games, that's only going to make this thing tougher on the Army Black Knights. But all Army's turnovers, again, you heard me talk about it, are forced via the interception. Now, I think Notre Dame is going to try to attack the secondary a lot more than their defensive front, but at the same time, this is the Notre Dame offense that is built on the run first, right? They only average around 199 passing yards per game, so that's under 200. They average over 200 rushing yards per game, and that's just because Notre Dame has got a lot of horses in that backfield. Jeremiah Love as well as Jadarian Price. Riley Leonard, of course, running the football. He has over 100 carries this season. That has been crucial for the Notre Dame offense this season. So I think Riley Leonard's going to be a big X factor here. Notre Dame might try to throw the football a little bit more than usual, but they're definitely going to test this Army Black Knight defensive front, and they're going to see what Army is made of. Again, guys, this is a lot tougher of an Army defense, and Army still in contention for a college football playoff spot. If Army can win this game and win the American Athletic Championship game, there's going to be a real conversation to be had about who should get that group of 5 spot, whether that's the likes of Boise State or Army, or maybe you even push one of the Power 4 conferences out. Like if there's chaos within the Big 12 that we'll talk about later on today, maybe that can happen. And that's a conversation for if Army is able to win this game. I just think Notre Dame has got too much firepower offensively for Army to keep up with, and Notre Dame's defensive front, I think, is going to make a big difference here in this game. I do think while they're not going to be able to stop, I do think they will be able to slow down what Army's able to do, and Notre Dame will adapt and change a lot of things. Since they played Navy, what was that, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a little over a month ago now at this point, Army's defense is a lot tougher, and it'll give Notre Dame some challenges, but Notre Dame will survive. I don't think Army will be able to do enough offensively, and I don't think this is going to be a blowout by any means, but I do see Notre Dame, again, just hanging in the lead most of this game, and I think they'll pull away with a couple scores fairly late. Army will put up a good fight, but they're just going to be no match for the Irish in this one. I got 30-13, and I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Goodbye.